We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph and Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 37a. And the previous Amud, the Gemara mentioned that there was a Gzeira on Davar Acher because of Davar Acher. And the Gemara wanted to know what exactly does that mean. And the Gemara said on the previous Amud that what that means is they made a Gzeira on a child Ovid Kochavim. That's a child that's an idol worshiper. They treated that child as if he was Tamei Beziva. And the reason they did that was so that he would not engage with Jewish children in Mishkav Zachar. And the Gemara was dealing on the previous Amud with at what age was that decree made, meaning at what age is this child Metame Beziva. And the Gemara says that we should follow the opinion of Rabbi Chia, that it's a child who is 9 years old in a day, Hoel Veroy Lebia, because since at that point in time he's able to have Bia in active relations, so therefore Metame Nami Beziva. Therefore, there is Tumas Ziva as well, and so that is the nature of that decree. And Rashi explains, Hoel Veroy Lebia, the time of the Gzeira Ziva. What's the reason for the whole Gzeira again that we consider him to be like a Zav? Mishum Bia Havoy, it's because of the act of relations, Kedi Amron, like we said in the previous Amud. Shelo Yehi Tinok Shel Yisrael Rogel Etzlo B'Mishkav Zachar, that a Jewish child shouldn't be together with him in Mishkav Zachar, that's a male with a male. Hilkach Lo Gazru Ala Ad Chazi Lebia. Therefore the Gzeira, they didn't make the Gzeira until he actually was fit and able to have the act of relations. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ravina says, Hilkach, therefore, hatinokes ovedes kochavim. If you have a non-Jewish girl, bas gimel shanim v'yom echad, once she reaches the age of 3 years old in a day, hoel u'ru'uya lebia, since she is fit to have bia at that age, meaning when it comes to girls, they are able to have an active relations at 3 years old in a day. So therefore, again, if we're talking about a non-Jewish girl, an idol worshiper who is a young girl, mitame nami beziva, she also will have the same halacha. She's going to be mitame beziva. That same decree will apply to girls, just like it applies to boys. And we will note over here that there were two opinions on the previous summit in terms of the Gzeira on Benosei and on their daughters. That's the daughters of Ovdei Kochavim. There was one opinion that the Gzeira on Benosei and the Gzeira on their daughters was because of Avoda Zara, and that it had to do with Yichud, it had to do with seclusion. That was an extended discussion on the previous summit. But there was another opinion mentioned on the previous summit that the Gzeira on their daughters was that immediately from the time they're in the crib, they have the Tumas Nida. And there's a question among the Rishonim whether this opinion over here, Ravina's opinion, that at 3 years old and a day there is this Tumaziva, is that disagreeing with the opinion on the previous Amud that they're considered to be Nidas from the moment they're born or not? That's a discussion among the Rishonim. And in any case, the Gemara continues and asks, Pshita, isn't it obvious what Ravina is saying? Meaning to say, if you're going to say that a non-Jewish boy, that he's going to have the Tumaziva from the time that he's able to have an active relation, so shouldn't the same thing be true when it comes to a non-Jewish girl, that it should be again from 3 years old in a day when she's able to have an active relations? And the Gemara says, it's not necessarily obvious. Ma'u detema, what might you have said? Hay yoda la'argule, when it comes to the boy who's 9 years old, so he knows how to get someone to commit a sin. V'halo yoda la'argule, when you're talking about a girl who's only 3 years old, she's not able to do that. And so Kamash Malon, that's what Ravina is teaching, that we do extend this decree to girls even at the age of 3. Rashi explains, Pshita, it's obvious, Kevin Detinok Misha Sharoi, if by the non-Jewish child who's a boy, we say it's from the moment he's able to have Bia, so Huadin Latinokas, shouldn't that be true for the girl as well? And the Gemara says, Mao Detema Hai Tinok Kisharoi Labia. One might say that when it comes to the boy, when he's able to have relations, who arim largule lahamshech Yisrael etzlo, he's also smart enough to try to draw the Jew to him, again, in order to commit that avera. Aval tinokas bas gimel, but when it comes to a girl who's 3, afagav de bas bia, even though she's able to have bia, ein bo armumist, she doesn't have that same level of ability of knowledge, de lo yada largule, she's not going to be able to convince someone to do a sin, achetehei bas tisha, until she reaches 9 years old, so lo nigzar aleh, so maybe we shouldn't make a gezerah by her when she's just 3 years old. And so Kamash Malon, that's where Ravina is teaching that we do extend the Gezerah to a Tinokas Ovedes Kochavim even at the age of Bas Gimel Shan and V'yom Echad. And the Gemara continues, Mistamich v'yozol Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, Kasvei de Rabbi Simloi Shamei. Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya, he was leaning on the shoulder of Rabbi Simloi, who was his attendant, and he was walking along with him. Amar Lei said to him, Simloi, lo ha'isa emish beveis hamedrash. He said, Simloi, were you not with us yesterday in the Beis Medrash? Kishihitarnu es Hashem, and when we permitted the oil of Ovdei Kochavim. Amar Lo, he said back to him, Biyamenu ta'atir afes hapas. In our days, you should even permit the bread of Ovdei Kochavim. Amar Lo, he said to him, Kain, if so, if we would go that far, Karulan Beis Dina Sharia, they would call us a court that is a permissive court. Titnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Edius, Hayed Rabbi Yossi ben Yoezer Ish Tzreida, Rabbi Yossi ben Yoezer Ish Tzreida, he testified as follows, Al Ayel Kamsa Dechan, that refers to a particular kind of locust, of a grasshopper, that it is pure. He testified regarding that. V'al Mashke Beis Mitbachaya Dechan, and also with regards to the liquids that are by the slaughterhouse of the Azara, that they're pure. We'll see Rashi in a moment. V'al Yikrav Lemisa Misav, and anyone who comes close to a dead body is going to be Tameh. Those were the three testimonies. V'karule Yosef Sharia, and they referred to him as Yosef Sharia, Yosef who was permissive because he permitted these three things. And so therefore we can't go so far to permit the bread as well. Amar Lei said to him, Hasam over there, Shara Talas, there he permitted three things. Umar Shara Chada, and the master, you're only permitting one thing. V'yishari Mar Chada Achris, and if you go ahead, if the master goes ahead and permits one additional thing, Akati Tartin Hudahavian, still it's only two, it's not three, and so you won't be called a permissive court. Amar Lei said to him, Ano Sharai Achrisi, actually I permitted an additional item as well, as we will see. And Rashi explains again the three permissions of Rabbi Yossi ben Yoezer Ish Tzreida. The first was Ayel Kamsa Min Chagavu, again that's a certain kind of locust. Techan Shehutar, the point was that it's considered to be tahor, here means to say it's kosher. Umutter Ba'achila, it's permitted to eat it. V'al Mashka Beis Mitvachaya, then he also testified about Mashka Beis Mitvachaya. What that means is Hadoma v'hamayim shein bebeis hamitbachayim sheba'azara. That's the blood and the water that's in the slaughterhouse by the Azara. Dechan, meaning Lo Gazru Aleim Tumas Mashkin. Normally liquids, they have a tumma, it's a gezerah midrabanan, and that doesn't apply to these liquids. Now there's a machlokas about this later on. Rav Amar Dechan Mamish, Rav says it means it's actually pure. The Savar Ein Mashkin Mekabel Tumma, he holds that the Mashkin in general are only Mekabel Tumma Ela midrabanan, they're only Mekabel Tumma on a drabanan level. Uvahani Lo Gazer, and over here there was no gezerah whatsoever, there's no tumma at all. Ushmuel Amar, and Shmuel says the meaning of this is Dechan Milatame Tumas Acherim, it's just pure that it's not going to be Metame something else. Aval Tumas Atzmon Yesh Len, but they themselves can become Tameh. Kasavar Shmuel, and the reason for this is because Shmuel holds Yesh Lamashkin Tumah Min HaTorah, that there is Tumah na Doraisa level when it comes to Mashkin, Lihi Tameh V'lo Motzur Rabbanan L'Dachino, and therefore at that level, the Rabbanan are not able to declare it pure. V'al Diyikrav L'Mesa Misav, and then the last thing was that somebody who comes close to the dead is going to be Tameh, which Rashi says means Hanogea B'Meis Tameh, somebody who touches a mace, a dead body is going to be Tameh. Well, the Kamon Parach, now the Gemara is going to ask on this later on, Hadoraisa. Number one, this is a Doraisa. What does it mean that Rabbi Yossi ben Yoezer is talking here about apparently Derabbanans, but this is actually a Doraisa? V'yod hachumri, and furthermore, this seems to be a stringency. V'Yosef asrami boile, it should have said Yosef prohibited, and here it's talking about the fact again that Yosef is being permissive. And Shara Tlas, again, permitted three. To halakamon mefarish, again, as Rashi points out, later on it will be explained, to hai al diyikrav lamesa misav, that even that statement that anyone who comes close to the dead is tameh, kulahi, that too is a leniency. And the Gemara continues, Maihi, what was this second thing that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is referring to that he had already permitted? The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, this is a Mishnah Meseches Gittin, Zegitechim lo basim mikan at shnei masar chodesh. Let's say a person says, this is your get, if I don't come for 12 months, if I don't return. And then umeis besoch shnei masar chodesh, then he turns out that he dies within the 12 months, so he's obviously not going to return. But the Mishnah says, Eino get, the Mishnah says it is not a good get. Rashi explains, Eino get, the whole lo amar, sheyehei get ela ad Yud Beis Chodesh, because what he said was that the get will actually take effect after the 12 months. Vukvar Meis. Now, at that point in time, when it's supposed to be taking effect, he's died. Vein Yachol Lagarish. He's not able to divorce her at that point in time because he already died. She's essentially a widow. Uzakuko Liyavam, and therefore she's going to be obligated to do Yibum. Let's say there's a brother. Emein Loben. Let's say there was no son. If they didn't have a son, then she has to do Yibum. And so the point is she'll be bound by that Yibum. Avaliyamar Me'achshav Yehei Get. Now Rashi points out, let's say he would have said that it's going to be your get Me'achshav from now, which is retroactive. Imlo Basi Ad Yud Beis Chodesh, if I don't come for 12 months. Vameis, and then he dies. Besoch Kach in the interim. Hareza Get, then that actually would be a get because it would take effect retroactively. Ve'ena Zakuk Yavam, and then she would not be obligated to the Yavam. That would be the case if he said Me'achshav, but again, in this case, he did not say Me'achshav, and that's why the Mishnah says Eino Get. Now, V'tani Allah, now we learned on that Mishnah, V'raboseinu hitirua linase, that our rabbis, they did did permit her to get married. Ve'amrinan man Rabboseinu, and we say, who is Rabboseinu? Amar Rav Yehuda Mar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says, Beis Dina Tesharu Mishcha. It's the same court that permitted the oil, and so that's the exact idea over here. That's the court of Rav Yehuda Nasiya. Rav Yehuda Nasiya was saying, were you with us yesterday in the Beis Medrash? Kishitarnu es Hashem, when we permitted the oil, that same court permitted this woman to remarry as well, and that's why Rav Yehuda Nasiya was saying that he had already permitted something. And the Gemara now explains the logic of this permission. Savri Lok Rav Yossi, he holds like Rav Yossi, Diamar Zmano Shel Shtar Mochiach Olav, because Rav Yossi says that the date on the shtar, it proves that even in this case, really, it was intended to be retroactive. Rashi explains, Rabbi Yossi b'Baba Basra, b'Perek Yeshnochel, and this is following Rabbi Yossi in Baba Basra. It says over there, Hakosev kol nechasav livno le'achar moso, somebody writes over all of his property to his son after his death. Tzarech sheyichtov mehayom ula'achar misa, he needs to phrase it as from today after death. And if you phrase it that way, they'll have a mashma gufa mehayom, then it implies the actual land itself is going to be from today, meaning shaloah hey rashoy lamochram, that I'm not able to sell that property. Upira liachar misa, but the fruits, that's going to be after death. V'im lo kasav mehayom, now if he doesn't write the word mehayom, elo liachar misa, he just says it's going to be after death, lo amar klum, so then he hasn't said anything, v'yirsho echavimo, and the other brothers can inherit just like the son, because that's not going to take effect. Oim hayalav balchov mu'uchar or let's say, for example, he has a creditor that's later after this gift. Balchov govas chovo. So again, the gift is not going to take effect, and the balchov can collect his debt. That's what it says over there. But then Rabbi Yossi says, Einot tzarech, he does not need to write mehayom. That's not necessary. To lahachi ksiv zman b'shtar. That's why the date is written in the document. Lomar me'achshav tehei matana means to say that from now it should be a gift. Migufa shel karka, in terms of the property itself. Upeiros le'achar misa, and the fruit will be le'achar misa after death. Because if he only wanted to give it to him after death, what did he need to write? The date in the shtar. We apply the same logic over here by the get. Zamano shall get mochiach, the date on the get proves that this is really what he was saying all along. It should be a get from now if I don't come. It's a condition. When he doesn't come, so then the condition is fulfilled. And so that's why he's following Rabbi Yossi, that's why it takes effect. And the Gemara continues, V'yomer Rabbi Abba b'reid Rabbi Chia bar Abba, and Rabbi Abba, the son of Rabbi Chia bar Abba, said, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi hora v'lo hodu lo. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, again, he issued this ruling that it was permitted, and they did not admit to him kol shaito, all of his time, v'amri lo kol sayato, and some say it means all of those who were with him. Rashi explains, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi is, again, it's not really Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, it's Ben Beno Shel Rabbi Haya. This is really the grandson of Rabbi, of the one that we refer to as Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. That's why you say this is Rabbi Yehuda Nisiya. Hora shehi muteres linasei, he issued the ruling that she's able to remarry, and again, they did not agree with him kol shaito. If you understand kol shaito, it means kol yomov nechelku alav. It means all of his days they argued with him. If you say kol siato, so then it means all of the chachamim in his time, they disagreed with him. As the Meseches Hasha says on Kol Siyato, Meseches Hasha says, Perish B'nei Midrasho, everybody in his base Medrash, they did not agree with him. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rebbe Elazar lahusab, Rebbe Elazar said to a particular elder, Ki sharisua, when they permitted her, meaning to say, when Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya permitted this woman to remarry, La alter sharisua, were they saying it was permitted immediately, to lo asi, because he's not going to come, Odil maliachar shnei masar chodesh, or maybe after 12 months, at that point, to haikayim leitanai, when the condition was fulfilled, only at that point will she be able to remarry. Again, that's talking about in a case where he says, Zegitechim lo basim ikan ad shnei masar chodesh, this is your get if I don't come for 12 months, and then he dies within 12 months. So we said that Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya considers it to be like what Rabbi Yossi said, that zmano shel shtar mochiach olav, it's considered to be retroactive. And so in this case, when he dies, it's obvious he's not going to come after the 12 months. So do we say already right now she's going to be considered divorced, or do we say that we have to wait the 12 months, then we see obviously the condition was not fulfilled, and then she's going to be divorced retroactively? That was the question that Rebbe Elazar asked a particular elder. And the Gemara says, but why ask that question to Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya? You could ask it on the Mishnah, because all that Rabbi Yehuda Nasiya added was that it's considered as if you said me'achshav, because the date of the shtar makes it me'achshav. But we already have a case of me'achshav in the Mishnah. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, if he says this is your get from now if I don't come for 12 months. Umeiz besoch shnei masar chodesh. Then he dies within the 12 months. He's obviously not going to come. Have a get, so then it's a get. Hoikayim leitanoi, because again the condition is going to be fulfilled. V'tiboilach. So you should ask la'alter have a gita dehaloasa. Is it a get immediately because he's not going to come? O dilmar maybe li'achar yud beis chodesh. Maybe after 12 months, then we're going to say retroactively it's a get. Hoikayim leitanoi, because then the condition was fulfilled. So why not just ask the question on the Mishnah? Why ask Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya? And the Gemara said, the Gemara said, indeed, you could have really asked on the Mishnah. Ela mishum dehavis bahum and yana. The reason why Rabbi Lazar asked this particular elder about Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya because this elder was present at the vote when Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya permitted this, and that's why he was asking this elder about this particular case. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaya says, Hakol Modim, everybody agrees. Let's say a person makes a condition that when the sun comes out from its sheath, which basically means when the sun rises, that's when the get will take effect. So that clearly means that the get only takes effect when the sun comes out. And therefore, if he would die in the middle of the night, the get would be taking effect after his death, which of course means it would not take effect. Let's say it's phrased that the get should take effect on condition that the sun comes out. So then me'achshav kamarla, then everybody also agrees that it's clear he means from now. That's retroactive. V'chimayis belayla, and when he dies at night, havadai tanohave, it is certainly a condition. V'get mechayimu, and that would be a get that's being given when he was alive. In that case, the get would be good. It would be retroactive. Kidur Rav Huna, it's just like Rav Huna says. Diyam Rav Huna, because Rav Huna says, Kol omer al manas ki omer me'achshav dami. Anytime you use the word al manas on condition, that's the same thing as saying me'achshav, that it should be from now. That is certainly retroactive. Lo nechliku, the machlokes only is ela be'im teitze, in a case where the way it's phrased is im teitze, if the sun comes out. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi savar like Rabbi Yossi. Again, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya holds like Rabbi Yossi. Diamar zmano shel shtar mochiach olav, who says that the date on the star shows that it's retroactive. V'havalei kemei hayom imamati kemei achshav imati, and he considers it as if the person said, from today if I die, from now if I die, and so it's retroactive, and the get takes effect. For Rabbanon leslu de Rabbi Yossi, and the Rabbanon they disagree. They don't hold of Rabbi Yossi. V'havalei kezegitech im mati grade. It's considered like this is your get if I die alone, meaning it's not retroactive, and therefore if he dies in the middle of the night, the get will not take effect. And the Gemara continues, Gufa, returning to what we said above, Heyed Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzreida, Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzreida testified, Al ayil kamtza dechan, and the ayil kamtza, again, a kind of grasshopper, that it is pure, the al mashke beimid bechaya dechan, and also on the liquids of the slaughterhouse of the Azara, that they are pure, the al de yikrav lemesa misav, and the one who comes close to the dead is tameh. The karule Yosef Shari, and they called him Yosef, who was permissive. And the Gemara says, my ayil kamsa, what exactly is this ayil kamsa? What kind of grasshopper are we talking about? Rav Papa Amar Shushiva. Rav Papa says we're referring to the Shushiva. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Rav Chia Barami Mishmei De'ula Amar Susvil. And Rav Chia Barami says in the name of Ula that we're referring to a grasshopper, the Susvil. Rav Papa Amar Shushiva. Rav Papa says Shushiva. V'kamiflagi Barosho Arach. They're arguing about a grasshopper with a long head. Mar Savar Rosho Arach Aser. One says the long-headed grasshopper is forbidden. Umar Savar Rosho Arach Mutter. And the other one says, again, that would be Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzreida. He says that if it has a long head, it's mutter. Rav Chia Barami Mishmei De'ula Amar. And Rav Chia Barami in the name of Ula, he says, and Rashi explains, Shushiva min chaga v'rosho arach. Again, Shushiva is a kind of grasshopper with a long head. V'kamiflgi Yossi ben Yoezer v'Rabbanan b'rosho arach. And Yossi ben Yoezer and the Rabbanan, they're arguing about a grasshopper with a long head. The simonei chagavim tahorim nafkolon me'ar b'solam chargol chagav. The simonim of what's considered a kosher grasshoppers learned out from the pasuk lists specific kinds of grasshoppers. Arbe Solam Chargol Chagav Upligi Tanoi Beilutrefus. There's a machlokas Tanoim about this in Eilutrefus and Chulin. Barosho Arach, they argue specifically about a grasshopper with a long head. Ika de Doin Le Bechlalu Prat. Some understand the pasuk as a generalization and then with specifications stating particular kinds of grasshoppers. Diein Bechlal Elamasha Prat, that you can only include what's specified. Hani Mini Shari, only the ones that are specified, those species are permitted. Aval min achrina lo, but other species are not. V'chol mina dahani ein rosho orach, and all of the species that were mentioned, they don't have a long head, and that's why this would not be allowed. V'iko dedoin b'klal uprat uklal. Now in Chulin, there are those who say that no, you shouldn't darshan the pasuk as just a klal uprat. You should darshan it as a klal uprat uklal, and we include anything similar to the prat. Umarvi kol ka'ena prat. We include anything similar to the prat. Lo roy arbik or roy solim, etc. And the Gemara over there goes through it. Hatzar hashavash behen. The Gemara there ends up saying that according to that, the common denominator is sheyesh len daled raglayim. They have 4 legs. Daled kanafayim. They have 4 wings. V'yesh len karsulim. They have jumping legs. Uknaf of chof and esrubo, and the wings cover the majority of the body. That's the kind. Those kind of grasshoppers are kosher. Afani yavi kol sheyesh lo daled simonim halalu. We include anything that has those 4 simonim, and therefore even a grasshopper with a long head would be included and would be permitted. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis.